This is an SM Media production.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of SM Media's Road to Cheltenham 2023. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always, and always a pleasure to be joined by from the Scottish Daily Mail, Calum McClurkin. Calum, it's not been a busy week in terms of, obviously a lot of races have been called off. It's going to be the Irish recap this week. Thank God for Ireland.
Yeah, Ireland seems to be some of the weather in Britain, unfortunately, hasn't. Hopefully that will change this weekend. I think Cheltenham's going to definitely be on. It's a shame Lingfield getting called off, other places as well, but that's kind of the weather that we've been dealt with. But you go to this weekend and it's beefed up the trials date at Cheltenham. The Clark's House being at least rearranged, and you've got 9 races there on the Saturday. So, and you've still got plenty of like stuff on in Ireland as well. And then next week you'll be in the Dublin Racing Festival. So yeah, it's definitely going to click into gear sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's getting exciting as well. We obviously had the kind of sad news about Allegorie as well. How hard is that? Obviously, we know we're sending our best and things. It's really difficult. But if I could put you in the spot, I kind of have put you in the spot. A favourite Allegorie memory, mine is always a Supreme one because I was there in the flesh.
Yeah, Supreme was pretty special. He backed him to turn over the Mullins hot pot min, which he kind of did pretty well. Even when he won the Arc earlier, he was kind of challenged and he did quite well there. Champion Chase, but always prevailing memory of Altior is when you think he's in trouble, and then just the turbo happened up the hill, and he always got himself out of it. So yeah, and an exceptional horse, and just all hope that he pulls through.
Yeah, absolutely. We're sending our best to the team at 7 Barrows. We did have some questions there this week, as always. If you've got a question, please send it in the comments below and we'll answer it. A question that's been doing the rounds a lot in kind of anti-post shows: why are bookmakers so tight with anti-post prices at the present moment? We've had this discussion a lot this year so far. It's one thing, it's like I don't know, you're probably the same as me. I've had very little in terms of anti-post bets compared to what I usually do for Cheltenham. It's just really hard to find the value for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's significantly shorter prices and more compressed markets that they're dealing with. The thing is, if there's a demand for a product, then the bookmakers can do whatever they want. There are people out there that are taking pretty prohibitive prices a long way out. So, if the market was kind of fairly non-existent, then bookmakers will kind of push certain horses out to kind of generate some interest. So there are people out there that are backing horses regardless at what appears pretty poor prices. So the bookmakers are under no obligation to kind of make it easy on themselves a little bit. I just think there's a bit more kind of popularity around the whole thing, more shows, more stuff, more interest, more focus on Cheltenham than the other thing. Is it unhealthy? Might be for the sport. You're probably kind of looking at, and it's easier to kind of form markets because there's more focus around Cheltenham Festival. You kind of know. You know that the majority of the winners will come from Ireland. You know that the majority of the Irish winners will come from Willie Mullins. So you price kind of accordingly. And there's a lot of trends that you can follow, and there's a lot of kind of patterns that bookmakers and punters alike will spot, and that will form markets. So I think everyone's got kind of Cheltenham on their mind quite often, and it's just reflected in the markets now in terms of the prices.
Yeah, as always, we always maybe think too far ahead at times. And there's a question here: if you could pick a bet for the 2024 Cheltenham Festival, what would it be? I've got 3 written down. You want me to go first?
Okay, if you've got 3, because I'll just have 1.
Right. I think Constitution Hill will go over fences, so I think he'll win. I think he'll be a solid bet for the Arco. Probably price you'll get won't be great, but I think he's definitely if he goes over fences, I would say that's the place to go. I think Lossiemouth, Mare's Hurdle. I think obviously the champion hurdle, if she was to win the Triumph Hurdle, she would probably stay over hurdles next year, I would assume. You've got Vauban probably getting another year older. I think Vassy Vega could potentially go over the champion hurdle route next season if he was to be flawless this year. I think Lossiemouth could be the Mare's Hurdle horse for the future. And I've kind of went a wee gamble. I think the nice guy, if he was to be back to his best, I think he could be a good player next year for the Brown Advisory. Still only lightly raced. He's obviously going to be 9 next year. He's still lightly raced. I think he's only run over rules 5 times. Like, he's still very lightly raced. If he's back to his best, I fancied him for it this year. If he's back to what we think he could be, I think he'll be a player next year.
All interesting shouts, particularly Lossiemouth for the Mayor's Hurdle. I was suggesting that she's kind of all speed, but that she could be a champion hurdle horse down the line. But
I just think with Vauban and Facile Vega, if they do that, I think they'll maybe move her to the Mares.
It's quite interesting how you campaign a kind of mare that young into open company.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one for Willie Mullins to kind of cope with. That's assuming that she does the business in the Triumph, of course. Mine would be Night and Day in the Mare's Chase. I think she's a chase. She's an absolute brute of a horse, and I think she'd be a lot better over fences. So she's not really on my radar for the Mare's Novices Hurdle, but she is kind of prominent in the market, and her debut was quite well. It wasn't her debut; her seasonal debut was quite striking. So I think she's built for fences, and I think that's where her future lies. So I can see her kind of being an Allegorie, the Vassy kind of type of it, not really doing much this year, but having obvious potential and getting better over fences. So I'd probably put her up for the Mare's Chase next year.
Yeah, I think that's my Trixie. As many people probably don't know, I do a Trixie the week before this year's Cheltenham for next year. I've got Constitution Hill at 10-1 for the champion hurdle. So I think thinking ahead is quite good.
Yeah, it's funny enough. I mean, last year, I did look at prices and thought, well, they're all pretty kind of miserable and flimsy. But if they're being consistently cut into what we've got to deal with right now, then yeah, you'd be looking for like anything really. Cheltenham 2024 right now, 25s plus. You might not get that, but if Facile Vega wins a big Supreme and looks like an absolute kind of banker for the Turners or something like that, if you're offered 8-10-1 at the start of the season, then it's probably now not a bad bet. Even though kind of maybe a few years ago you'd be kind of a bit lukewarm about it. I mean, the big one that I looked at pre-season was Allegorie de Vassy at 10s for the Mare's Chase, and that was at the start of the season where I was pretty convinced that she was a chase, and I was pretty convinced she'd run there. But it was a whole year out, and 10-1 for a horse that's get a whole year to like improve and scope for. I mean, now she's like 64, 74. So in hindsight, you'd say, well, that would have been a good bet, but at the time, and even now, I've got no regrets of not having a 10-1 ticket of like sweating for months and months over it.
Yeah.
Even now, though, there is some decent opposition against her and a few kind of niggling doubts. But it's the nature of the game at the moment that it's pretty prohibitive. And if you're not happy with the price, you can kind of either lump on or leave it. And I'd be more inclined to leave it at the moment.
Yeah, we'll do a Dublin Racing Festival kind of full preview next week, but we do have a question here. What are your early bets for the Dublin Racing Festival next week? I'll let you go first.
To be honest, I've got absolutely zero, because Willie Mullins has entered all sorts of horses for all these races, and I would rather kind of wait and see. So I'm just monitoring the markets and seeing who's going to go where. The most interesting aspect of it is that Appreciate It seems to be a 2.5 miler. The way the exchanges are going, the exchanges are flying, that he's going to run the 2 mile 5 race in the Dublin Racing Festival rather than 2 miles, which means Turners probably for him. So I mean, I'm just Willie Mullins has got the vast majority of the entries there. So I mean, I just wait to kind of see what he kind of declares, rather than kind of diving in at Ante post. I'm interested in Goodland and then Nathaniel Lacey.
Yeah.
Fearless, but that's also kind of short enough. And again, Willie Mullins could enter all sorts there as well. So I'd rather just kind of wait and see.
I kind of think Factor File's quite big in the bumper at 12s. I think he's kind of, but I don't think that's a vintage bumper. I would be quite happy to take on, is it Facile Mode? I think 12-1 for that, for Factor File. Probably looks like he needs further, but again, I just think he's a bit big compared to everybody else in the market. I'd quite like to see American Mike. If I know 6s is maybe a bit short. That race doesn't look a vintage renewal to me. I know Goodland is probably got, well, he's only entered the Ballymore as well, which I thought was quite surprising. American, I'm just keen to see American Mike, and I would quite like to see how Imagine gets on in the handicap hurdle, because I kind of think he could be my Martin Pipe horse if he keeps his if he does well in that race. I think he could probably be my Martin Pipe horse.
Yeah, I mean, Gaelic Warriors in a handicap, isn't he? You know, he's not going to
Gaelic Warriors entered in every handicap, I think.
He's not going to go in the Betfair hurdle anyway. He's taken out of that one at least. So yeah, there's just kind of so many options, but you're kind of at hostage to Willie Mullins at this regard.
Yeah.
So the Arkle, I think the Irish Arkle's an interesting race. Phil Dorn, Banbridge pitch up against kind of Willie Mullins is kind of best. You'd be looking for kind of like a decent kind of winner pecking order to kind of emerge from there to maybe challenge John Bone. So yeah, I just think it's kind of it's a very important piece of the puzzle for Cheltenham down the road, and you know, and it probably is going to kind of finalise Willie Mullins' kind of Cheltenham plans as well off the back of it. And it's a big festival in its own right with a lot of prize money. So yeah, I mean, I just think you're kind of waiting for what Willie Mullins kind of does and declares and enters before kind of diving in with kind of any real confidence.
Yeah, definitely. We will move into the recap for the weekend. It's all Irish this week. We only have Irish horses to talk about. Some interesting Cheltenham clues, I would say. We will start on Saturday at Navan. 5 horses to mention. We will start with Path de Rue, who is now sitting about kind of 14th for the county hurdle. Stayed on pretty well, held up in the rear. What's your kind of thoughts on him? Could he potentially be a handicap player?
It's usually an informative race for handicaps. Banbridge won it last year before taking out the Martin Pipe. It's a shame about Intranet, who went wrong. Vlaska took a false step, and it's a bit sad. And that kind of put a cloud over the whole kind of race. There was some decent types in that race. Path de Rue is a horse I've liked for a long, long time. Ran the Royal Bond, well backed. That was more of his kind of true showing. The Yard are now coming back to a bit of form. I think he's a big player in the county hurdle. We'll
move into the horse that ended a bad relationship for 6 years, Shanbally Kid for Gigginstown, obviously trained by Willie Mullins. 20 to 1s for the Bartlett. Looked a lot more polished than he did first time out. I thought he was a lot better. Maybe could do with that step up and trip. Do you think he's maybe an outside player in the Bartlett if he goes there?
He's one of several who've a squeak here. I've always said this is a really strong division, and it is again. Gigginstown have horses back with Williams, and you know this guy. You could potentially root him a Martin Pipe, but you're running out of runs in that regard. So yeah, I think he's a potential player in Albert Bartlett, but I think there are more obvious others that have got bigger claims at this stage.
Yeah, 5-year-old HMSC horse for Paul Nolan was really impressive, travelled really well. Now up to 139 and about 10 to 1 for the Coral Cup. I thought this was a really good performance. I thought this horse last year was quite a decent 4-year-old. He's taken a step up. There's a lot of talk about him potentially going the kind of handicap route. Looks a decent performance. Yeah, this is where I'll have a gripe with handicap markets, because this was on my radar for a long, long time for a Coral Cup. And it wasn't priced up until he hacks up here. Now he's 10. So I'm pretty annoyed by that, because I thought somebody might show and put him in the market at like 20, 25 or something. If he was 14 to 1 plus, I'd be pretty interested in him. 12s and 10s for Coral Cup this far out. It's skinny enough for me. He's been gelded. He was a good 4th in the Boodles, which is obviously working out fairly well this year. And the gelded operations done the trick. He was pretty popular for a big race in the Galway Festival, a lot better. His jumping's a lot slicker, and he'd definitely be at the front of a lot of queues in a Coral Cup at the moment, because I think there's a lot more to come. We now have a solid champion bumper favourite, and it's Willie Mullins' horse, will be surprised to hear, called It's For Me for Simon Mary and Isaac Swade. 7 to 2. Probably the best bumper performance we've seen this season. It was really, really nice. It's definitely the most polished and complete and visual performance that you'll see. What the form is worth in behind, that's the thing, yeah. About being a 72-41 kind of favourite at this stage. It's normally a bumper that Gordon Elliott runs these horses in.
He didn't have one in it this year. Three Stripe Life ran it, Esky Lane ran it, placed horses in it. It's not one traditionally that Willie Mullins targets that well. It was just a complete performance. It was more kind of accustomed to what you'd normally see in a bumper horse, like pretty smooth progress, winning quite handily, lots more to come, all that kind of stuff. Whether the depth is there to justify favouritism for a champion bumper, yes, but 72 is short enough. I think the likes of Chapeau du Soleil will go the Fernie Hollow route and skip the Dublin Racing Festival and go for a bumper win. I have confidence in maybe come in with kind of higher profile, but he was well backed, very strong in the market today, and I think a few of the Mullins camp have very good tickets internally for this guy for the bumper. So yeah, he's obviously going to be very high in the short list, but it's a question of kind of how are the others going to kind of improve from their initial efforts in deeper company and how that will translate to his form. All he could do was win and win well.
Yeah. Final horse to mention at Navan was Maller Mission. About now 8-1 in places for the National Hunt Chase. Jumped well. Again, the National Hunt Chase could potentially cut up into a bit of a poor race if a certain favourite doesn't go. Is he a player?
Yes, at the moment. I mean, he obviously checked out rather tamely behind Chemical Energy early on in the season. And then he was kind of in behind the John McConnell pecking order of Bartonstown Lad because he turned up and did really well in Albert Bartlett last year. So he's been kind of under the radar, a bit like the Churchstone Warriors of this race.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really give them much of a chance, but if Galdemir doesn't go, then it opens up. You wouldn't want to kind of wade in what Chemical Energy's really achieved as a favourite for this race. So yeah, him and Churchstone Warrior would have options. They would definitely have live chances. You're just kind of again at the mercy of one horse in that race, and it's Galdemir. If he turns up, then he's going to be very, very hard to beat. Even though he does possess a lot of class, but he does possess a lot of kind of second place, third place finishes. For some reason. So, but that'll be a much weaker race, and he's usually contested. You're kind of the horses, but he did jump well. He has been to Cheltenham before, but you kind of think was that kind of sour experience as well for him. He pulled up, but it was, it wasn't quite. He was miles behind Chemical Energy, and a lot in that race didn't really enjoy themselves. So you'd be thinking there'd be a small kind of question mark there, but he did win in that Doncaster card last year quite well. So I don't think travelling's the issue. So you'd probably give him a pass for that. So yeah, he does have an each way chance, I think.
We'll move into Sunday and Thurles. We'll start with Allegorie de Vassy, 6-4, kind of joint favourite for the Mayor's Chase. Didn't really change much in the market. Again, a lot of people have spoke about the jumping. It was very untidy, particularly at the first fence. What impressed me though was she hit the line really well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of interesting race now, the Mayor's Chase, because you have kind of the Impervious, which is kind of the polished jumper, the maybe the better attitude, the kind of the more forward mare at the moment, but this kind of enormous untapped potential of Allegorie de Vassy. The fear is it should whack a couple and that'll set you back at Cheltenham badly, but she's so imposing and big that she just goes through it, and it doesn't seem to affect her too much. It's a serious engine. You don't really see mares kind of her makeup that often over fences.
Would you be concerned that she's only going right-handed?
Yeah, I think it's a concern. She does jump to right. She does kind of lurch there. She has raced exclusively right-handed in Ireland. I think it's not been that pronounced or jumping until that day. And in better company, it might be worse. It might be better. Colweaver was good enough to get out of it. I think she probably is as well. But you just kind of you do wonder if she needs another year to kind of fully flourish. While Impervious is kind of quite small and slight, but she seems to be kind of all there right now as a novice, rather than Allegorie de Vassy, who probably get enormous potential, but might not be kind of streetwise enough yet in open grade company. She might be better. She'll probably be better next year. She might even be good enough to go, Grade 1. So I mean, she does make novice kind of errors, and this is the thing with Mares Chases, that you're kind of inclined to go there because it's a graded race, an open company. But her and a Turners wouldn't be that bad an idea either. Getting £7 in novice company, it'll be might be slightly easier for her in that regard. Mighty Potter's ahead of that market. He can clout one as well. So yeah, it's an interesting situation for what they do. I mean, she does score right, but I think it was kind of more of a kind of focus thing rather than a kind of bounce jumping thing, because beforehand she was going right. There wasn't much to kind of notice in the jumping department there. So I'd give her just about a pass for that, and she's just about on terms of potential in grounds like that. I think she's just about the right favourite, but it's shaping up to be an interesting race.
Yeah, definitely.
Not one I'd have a bet in at the moment.
Yeah, it's tough. It's 64. You're 64 joint favourites. I mean, it's tough. I think Scotland. You've mentioned Scotland before. Scotland does slowly becoming a bet now at kind of 5-1, 6-1.
I just don't think any of them. I think the market's kind of right. It's not going to move much till the day, is it?
No, not really. No.
People have to weigh up kind of the novice form into the graded form and think about it. But the one that will come for money is probably going to be Allegorie de Vassy.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move into the horse and jockey Grade 2, which was won by Fakir Duderie. Kind of picked up the pieces. A lot of people are saying that he wouldn't have got up even if Horton Colours had stayed on his feet. I think the followers would have been the winner. Your takeaways from that race: Fakir Duderie, again, the comments are he'll only go to Cheltenham if Allaho doesn't turn up. Ascot seems to be the plan like it was last year. It turned into a bit of an interesting race because you probably took more away from the follow than anybody else.
No, that's a kind of quirk of Phil's track, where it's kind of constantly undulating and turning, which you can kind of give a pass for, like Allegorie de Vassy in the jumping department and a few others. So yeah, the fences kind of catch quite a lot of horses out there, and unfortunately caught out Horton Colour at the last. It's a horse with enormous potential. And he was really strong in the market. He came from like 20s to nowhere to like 13-2 before the off. So they knew what they're doing there and backing him. He does have serious potential. I think he was going to win. I think Fakir might have stayed on for a bit and got within a length, but that was it really. I think the winner had a little bit up his sleeve, even coming at the last. It was a lovely ride until then from Brian Cooper as well, smuggling him into it, and your eye was always drawn to him. The fascinating thing with Horton Colour is that he's not got a Ryanair entry or any kind of Grade 1 entry for Cheltenham. So I don't know if they're kind of leaving him at home or waiting for entry with him, or might give him time off after that anyway. So, but in terms of Fakir Duderie, he'll go to Ascot. He'll probably take in Cheltenham and probably take an entry. And he does take his racing quite well. He's been around a lot now, though. I mean, he's a prominent juvenile that ran the Supreme. So I mean, he's been properly on the go for a good 4 or 5 years. You know what he's all about.
You'd love to own him.
Oh yeah, he's a terrific servant. I mean, he has a 160 horse. That's kind of what you know, and you know what you're going to get with him. I don't think that track suits him either. A bit like the John Durkin, I think it's a bit sharp. It's all happening a bit too soon for him, and you stay on. So I'd be interested if they went 3 miles with him again at Aintree. I think he's worth kind of trying again. The older he's going to get, and the more he kind of shapes like a steer to me. But I think he would have needed that run. I think they've kind of picked that race up because I think he'll actually be better next time out. So I think at Ascot, I think he'll have a right winning chance again. I think that's kind of it's going to be his Grade 1. If Allaho doesn't turn up, then he's his obvious kind of backup point for a Cheltenham. But he's certainly no kind of world beater or at a price at sevens for a Cheltenham Festival. I think he's kind of like it in and around Cheltenham. I think he's a bet, but at the festival himself, I think there's other classier horses. But again, if Allaho doesn't turn up, he's going to be an obvious starting point as favourite. So he'd all of a sudden be the kind of the one to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move into Embassy Gardens. Roughly kind of now 6-1 for the Albert Bartlett. 35 length winner. It was an impressive visual performance. This to me is the issue with anti-post markets at the moment, because this horse has been hammered in the past by a decent, like, good land. I think he was fourth in that race. He's now beat not a lot, and he's now second favourite for the Albert Bartlett.
Well, and the funny thing is here is that he was joint favourite for that race with Goodland, with Madman's Game. So I've picked the wrong steer in that regard for which Willie Mullins' horse will go to the Bartlett and price crash. It's Embassy Gardens and not Madman's Game. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible price now. I mean, it's a Willie Mullins factor, isn't it? It's,
if it wasn't trained by Willie Mullins, it would be 3 times the price.
Yeah, and a lot in behind didn't win the race, did they? The Elite Battalion, they've been out of form a little bit. So,
yeah.
You'd even be more suspect. But I mean, if you go past his previous form, this horse has temperament issues, I think, in a battle. I don't think he's very impressive the way he does it, but once challenged, I think he might struggle. So he wouldn't. Although he's probably getting each way chance, I think second favouritism for a race like that is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to contradict myself as well here, because I'm just looking at the stats. Willie Mullins has operated in the past 14 days at a 38% strike rate. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, a lot of them are kind of entitled to win. So
yeah, that's.
You'd expect them to kind of at least have 20-25% all the time. It's a bit like the champion trainer, like Paul Nicholls running his kind of odds-on shots at Wincanton and Taunton and stuff. I mean, that's going to beef up your strike rate significantly as a top trainer, because the races that you'd expect to take out quite frequently. So yeah, I mean, Townend was like running at like 60%, winning in the last 2 weeks, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it comes with the territory. If you've got if you're holding all the cards, then there's going to be a lot of expectation on you to deliver.
I think the thing with Embassy Garden is he's not really done well in the two. It's what Unites has beat him, and then he get beaten by Good Land, and he didn't look as if he was up for a battle in either of them. And I think you need that for a Bartlett.
He looked ungenuine against It's What Unites isn't, and It's What Unites isn't really one that's kind of all heart either, really, on the kind of face of it. So no, I mean it's an obvious improvement in what he's doing. He might be a late bloomer, but he upped in grades into that kind of territory. There's enough questions over that price, I would think.
Yeah, we finally got a Hunter's Chase clue at Thurles on Sunday. We saw Ferns Lock beat Billaway by 20 lengths. Billaway always needs a run, we know that, and probably Billaway the horse for Cheltenham, or did Ferns Lock set down a marker for the Hunter's Chase?
Well, Billaway eventually won it last year, and I do think that he's kind of like a high 140s horse. So I mean, that is kind of the target. Ferns Lock's really young. Derek Christ is already Vassy wing leader. I don't think this guy will go to the festival. Right. I don't think that's a plan. I think long term, I think he's a good Hunter's Chaser. At the short term, I don't think he'll turn up, and I think they'll be relying on Vassy and on wing leader. So I think Derek Christie's got this kind of pretty well covered at the moment, and I think you'll be looking at those two and you'll be struggling to look beyond. But I mean, the Hunter's Chasers start coming out at this time of year, so there might be a high class recruit that can make a splash. But yeah, you'd be kind of. I do think he's never won the race. It's a long term plan, and I think Ferns Lock's one future rather than now, and I think Vosselet's probably the one now, because I think Vosselet was at this stage last year where Fernlock was, and they didn't risk him, so I think they're going to do the same thing here.
Yeah, we'll move into Tuesday at Down Royal. Couple to mention. We'll start with Dr. Bravo for Gordon Elliott. Roughly about 25 to the Ballymore. Maybe not a Cheltenham Festival player, but it does give your Dart Raven anti-post pick a form boost, because he was obviously second in behind last time out.
Yeah, and Gordon Elliott's the yard came out of slumber. Eventually, he won this well, from a decent yardstick in the big Doyen. And he stayed on pretty well, which he's probably a 2.5 miler, and I think Dart Raven's pretty similar. Problem is for Dart Raven is Imperi Vassy will probably go Ballymore as well. So he's running this 2 miler. I've, I've, I mean, I've gone in again 33s for him for the Supreme Dark Raven because he might now be back up for Fastlevega there, depending what he does. I don't think there's a better novice hurler price than Dark Raven for all these. I don't understand why he's still 33s.
Yeah.
For all these kind of, I mean, he could easily do something like Embassy Gardens does and run in like another ordinary race and hack up there and be slashed or something. I don't think he's significantly better than a 33-1 chance in a Cheltenham Festival wherever he pitches. So I think he should be half the price. So I mean, I've just topped up again the Ballymore. I would rather see him there, but and again in the Supreme because he might be covered for Fastlevega because we don't know where Imperi Pass is going. But he's one of very, very few horses that I think that's not been spotted. And, you know, Dr. Bravo winning is a good boost. He's probably not top tier graded level yet. He might be a handicapper, but again, you're pressed to get runs into him for Cheltenham now. So yeah, he's a bit kind of betwixt in between. But you know, if Gordon Elliott wants to pitch him in a Ballymore, doesn't have a great deal of options there, particularly if he's leaning towards Irish Point going Supreme. So
yeah,
the owner likes runners at Cheltenham as well, so there's no harm in pitching him in and see where he's at a Ballymore. You know, there's always other days down the line with him. So yeah, it was a good form boost for that Raven. That was my main plus out of it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move into the flat race that day. No time to wait for the same owners and same connections. Now about 10s, 12s for the bumper. Looked impressive. Was third at Christmas as well behind Ely Antique, who's the kind of mare who's sharing favouritism for the mare's bumper at Leopardstown. So again, gives her form a wee boost as well.
It does, but again, you kind of what is he beating in behind kind of thing. It's just the popular phrase of champion bumper contenders of what's the depth to this. I think you just get to kind of wait to see these horses square off with each other. Another potential double racing festival, but even then, Chapeau du Soleil's dodging that assignment. So I mean, it might even the bumper there might not be that informative. It's going to take a while to kind of divvy up. But I mean, it's another each way contender for Gordon Elliott. But again, it was another a bit like King of Kingsfield and all these kind of better days ahead and kind of things. That I'm not overly impressed with them at the moment.
One Gordon Elliott horse I know you are impressed by is 3-Card Bragg, who won yesterday at Fairyhouse. Really, really impressive performance. Stayed on really well. You've obviously got him at 14-1 to win any race. He's roughly about 7s for the Albert Bartlett. He could be going to the Martin Pipe as well. This is a seriously good galloping horse. I know you're impressed.
Yeah, this is probably the best ticket at the moment because I've liked him from day one. You know, I just like his attitude about things. He always tries. He got off the bridle. That race didn't run to suit him when he beat Spanish Harlem that much. I don't think he wants to lead. I think he's a kind of a lazy stare in that regard. Like you've got to kind of roast him up. But you know, once Spanish Harlem came alongside, you know, he galloped him into submission and won by 12 lengths, and he looked better the further he went. He hit the line quite well. The owner and jockey obviously want to go Albert Bartlett, and I can see why. The trainer might think that he's potentially a good thing in Martin Pipe, that there's 71 for both, and I've got 14-1 for either, so I'm pretty pleased in that regard. He does seem better in soft ground, but you know, a good to soft Albert Bartlett, I don't think would worry him too much. You know, he has raced him good. You know, he does handle it. He doesn't get jarred up by it either. So yeah, I think he's potentially pretty exciting. And second favouritism, I'd rather have him at that price than Embassy Gardens.
Definitely.
Than Albert Bartlett. I think Hidden Valley Lake is still the right favourite. He's definitely the one to beat in that race, but I think he is second best for sure. And yeah, the owner's always pretty consistent with his targets and updates, and I think the jockey was screaming Albert Bartlett after that race, so I think Gordon Elliott will listen to the owners and jockey there and send them to the Albert Bartlett.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to what's coming up this week. We do have action today. This is probably going to go out after the racing at Gowden Park. We'll start with the Galmoy Hurdle. Tia Hooper's a short price. This is suitable for Tiahupu, soft to heavy ground. It looks pretty good for him, doesn't it?
It does. He should win. Presuming that he stays, and the last day suggested that he should get 3 miles, no bother. He relishes steep conditions, so you'd expect him to win and maybe enhance his kind of Steers Hurdle credentials for that race. He'd all of a sudden be a bit of a spring on that particularly if it came up soft. He'd probably have a big chance if he proves it is kind of this stamina laden horse that people think he is. I don't think he's short of gears on bad ground. It's just whether he gets a trip or not, and I think he should. And the market suggests that he will. So he's got a good £20 in the hand of these. Some of the boys interesting. Coming there, he's got his conditions, so it'll be interesting to see how he runs. But it's not a betting race.
No, we'll move into the Thyestes handicap chase. We've carefully selected a horse that I took a hit on a couple of years ago. Is now 4-1. He's been gambled pretty well actually, like 4-1. I really like one here, and it's a graded winner this year. Darren's Hope for Robert Murphy, obviously beat Manila Crooner in that race a couple of months ago. I think Darren's Hope is the one for me here, and I also like Frontal Assault, who I think is well handicapped off 142. Obviously, Kieran Buckley claims £5 as well. I think they're two potential plays for me in this race.
Yeah, it's a wide open competitive handicap, isn't it? And there's probably a lot of middle and Gordon Elliott horses that be looking out for a Kim Muir, for instance.
Yeah.
Out of this, the one I like is the Barry Connell horse, Espirito Bello. I think there's a big pot in him, and today might be the day. I think he's got a reasonable shout at 10-1 each way, but yeah, I'm not overly confident in anything there.
Yeah, well, there's a very interesting handicap novice chase entry. Obviously, Sir Gerhard has entered the 2 mile beginners chase at 3:25. Again, kind of been interesting kind of reports coming out that he now seems to be jumping well. He now seems to be kind of at his best. There wasn't the vibe of that maybe a month ago from now, where there was talk of would they be able to run him at Cheltenham. This is quite interesting. It's an interesting place to start him.
Yeah, I mean, you need to find a kind of beginner's chase for him, and he's got a 3-runner heat here against, Larky Debuts is only
It's been a complete bomb pot
rival, and he's very, very in and out. After his kind of initial impression, people were kind of queuing up to back him for the Supreme, but now he seems to have gone completely down south. Yeah, you just kind of want to see Sir Gerhard really see what he's all about. He's obviously taken an upturn and picking up his form. I just think it took him a little bit of a long time for him to get back from his below par punches down effort. I think that's probably what's held him up a little bit. And I think people at the start of the season were suspecting that he's probably a 2.5 miler. He's probably going to go turners for Cheltenham, but he's got to kind of win well here because it's pretty tight to get another run into him before now in Cheltenham, I would think. Yeah,
we'll move into trials day at Cheltenham on Saturday. We've got a busy day on Saturday. It's going to be a really good, interesting day as well. We'll start with the juvenile hurdle, obviously known as the Finesse. We've got some interesting runners: Comfort Zone, Script Writer, Jupiter to Geet, Dixon Cove. It's a really competitive juvenile. Will you get a fancy here?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting to see what the Irish Challenge is, and if they actually come over. I think it's between Jupiter to Geet and Script Writer. Personally, I mean, there's kind of a lot of talk about the Script Writer. Milton Harris is confident enough that this horse can, do a job and potential in the Supreme.
Yeah.
Script Writer. So, yeah, it's pretty similar to his high class. I mean, he's probably in similar breath to Night Salute in what he had last year. And it's probably good enough to place a triumph. This edition looks as strong as it did last year. You had the top three that came to the fore last year in Pied Piper, Fildor, and Vauban, obviously. I mean, I think Willie Mullins has got 3 pretty rock solid contenders already that are cementing themselves at the top of the market, and Comfort Zone, who brings graded form to the fore as well. So if he goes, it will give the race a strong look. I like Script Writer. I think he won well on the flat.
Yeah.
People to the gate with the frost kind of thing. Is the ground going to be soft enough for him? Is it going to be rain? Is it going to get into the ground? or is it going to kind of dry up a little bit? Cheltenham's been struggling to get kind of anything soft groundish all year, so I don't think that's going to change massively because of a bit of a frost. So yeah, I would maybe lean with scriptwriter, but again, probably wait to see kind of the prices.
Yeah, I think the prices are everything here. I do think kind of scriptwriter, the having that flat run, I think it's just helped him as well. I think this is a really competitive race actually. Comfort zone. Even Dixon Cove, who ran on pretty well in that grade 2 at Chepstow, if the ground comes up soft again, there's 4 really interesting players, and I think it's hard to split them, and I'll probably just wait to the day. We do have the cross-country handicap chase. Delta Work has been confirmed to run. Rob James is in there as well. You've obviously got the novices handicap chase as well. Clarence House has obviously been rescheduled for Cheltenham. There's now 6 runners as opposed to 3. Energy and Edwardstone both retain their runs. Again, probably same as we thought last week. It's very interesting now that this is at Cheltenham.
And it's on the new course, not
yes,
old, which might suit Edwardstone better.
Could do.
It might be a bit more of a stamina test, and I think that will probably suit Edwardstone kind of waiting in. You can see Edward the gate going forward. Yeah, I would still say Energy, but I think confidence is slightly lessened a little bit. 8 to 15, I can leave that alone. I don't think I'll be betting on that. But
just bizarre that it's in the new course.
Yeah, it's just the Cheltenham Trials. He's always in the new course.
Yeah.
The January meeting there is always in the new course. So I think that's kind of how they kind of work it. It's old course earlier and the new course later on. Yeah, that's how they kind of do it. I just think Energy means probably just going to be a bit too good. But it's more interesting than it was last week. For sure in terms of
definitely.
Edit to the gate, you wouldn't entirely dismiss him. Going off from the front, and he's probably going to set it up more for Edwardstone than Energy tactically, but I still think Energy just going to be the better horse.
Yeah,
probably win.
Yeah, I think Energy will win as well, but I think Edwardstone will make it tough. We've got the handicap chase over 2.5 miles. An interesting entry for you. Brave Saska is in, has been declared, running off 154, about 11 to 1. Do you think this could be his day?
Well, I mean, he's been declared for quite a lot of these things in the handicap and the asking. There was one in the Winter Million that was called off, so they're obviously trying to kind of find something. I think he's potentially a player in a big Ryanair. So I mean, they did this with the one that was second a few years back to Frodo. Yeah, it's not alien to them, so they know kind of what they're doing. But yeah, you've been hoping for a decent run from him anyway in this. Again, it's one of your competitive handicaps. It's going to be a decent pointer to the plate again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move into the Cotswold Chase. It's looking like it's going to be Protectorate against Noble Yates. Ahoy Senior's in there as well. I think it's very hard to split these two horses, actually. They're only £3 apart in ratings. I think 2 very interesting players potentially for a Gold Cup.
They are, and again we're made to meet in the Winter Million, isn't it? But the Cotswold Chase is a notorious graveyard for Gold Cup hopes. Looks like Trouble's only one that's won the Gold Cup from it since its history. But it's like 1 for 59. It's a really bad record. And they're forced to go here because that's been off. Noble Yates was going to miss it anyway because of a vaccine issue. I don't think that's going to affect the market here too much. I'd probably side with Protectorate slightly over him. I just think he's a bit more proven and graded company than Noble Yates. Just about yet. Ahoy Senior price is interesting.
I kind of think Ahoy Senior I would play him here. I think this could be his day.
Him and Frodon, are pace angles, aren't they? Dusart's supposed to be a decent back class as well. So yeah, you will need a decent steer to win it. It is an interesting race. I'd probably off them all post Gold Cup because of the nature of the trial. It can be grueling. I mean, it's Chantry House when it last year, it practically ended him. To be honest.
Yeah, we'll move into the Cleve Hurdle. Paisley Park is 5 to 4. A really interesting entry in Gelino Bello, who's obviously come back down to hurdles. Dashel Drasher's in there as well. It could be soft enough for him. Paisley Park, do you think he's good? The good thing here?
It's interesting because he's not really a horse that you like to trust in short prices. This should be his assignment. This should be the one that suits. He's kind of defied expectation this year. And this will probably be the race that everyone will be on him, really, and rightfully so. And would it really surprise if he threw in a bad run here? Not really. I think that's kind of only doubt of taking him 5-4. Julian Bell is a fascinating entry.
Yeah.
Paul ties in with Blazing Cal. Paul Nicholls has obviously spotted an opportunity, and it's no coincidence that he's thrown him in here after hearing the news of Foreign Porter potentially being out. So reverting him back to Hurdle seems a decent move. Whether he'll need the run or a sighter beforehand will be interesting. But he does add a different kind of dimension to things. But I'd expect Paisley Park, if he shows up in the vein that he has been in all season, he should take this out.
Yeah, I hope he does. I hope he does and shortens up, because I need a wee anti-post play to shorten up in the market. I think this could be, again, it's one of those where I think a lot of horses, particularly like if Paisley Park was to bomb out, you wouldn't completely dismiss him for Cheltenham. He's capable of throwing in, as we say, like a howler here and there, and you still would think you would still have him in your list for Cheltenham.
True, he always runs well in this race on the Cleve, so I'd be a bit more surprised if he didn't win. But again, we're talking about the markets beforehand. If he wins this as is expected, is there any justification to short him?
Nah, that's the thing. Yeah, if it was to, the Stairs Hurdle looks a horrible race. It looks like he could be probably the highest rated horse in it, and he could be favourite.
In terms of quality, it's maybe questionable, but in terms of a betting heat,
it's a betting heat. It's good,
That's at least that's one thing out of it. A bit like the Ballymore. It's probably the weakest of the three hurdles, but at least it's a bit of a betting heat.
Yeah, we've got the Ballymore Novices Hurdle Grade 2 as well. Pembroke is the 11-4 favourite. Henry II's 4-1. There's a few kind of interesting ones in here. I like Rock My Way for Sid Hosey and Tom Scudamore at 15-2. I think he could be a player here. Was quite encouraged by his performance last time at Cheltenham behind We've All Been Caught. I think I could maybe think. I think he's a bit big at this price here.
Yeah, probably because of the yard. Maybe a bit unfashionable for a race like this, and he might be slightly overlooked. There has been nibbles only been clipped in from 14s this morning, so there are people that are going along with that line. I'm a big fan of Henry II. Whether Cheltenham is going to be his track is maybe debatable, but I do think he's a lot better than his mark. His mark's a 1-3-3. So he's potentially not a Ballymore horse, because Paul Nicholls has got Hermes Allen for that. So if he pitched up the handicap, he'd potentially be interesting. I think he could kind of further his claims here. Pembroke's got a lot of potential as well. You can see why they're the top two of the market. I'd probably lean with Henry II at the moment, but I can comfortably hold fire until the day.
Yeah, Doncaster have got a couple of races as well. We've got a Grade 2 Lightning Novices Chase over 2 miles. It's looking very much like a between Tommy's Oscar and Boot Hill. Boot Hill obviously brings the John Bond form in as well. Tommy's Oscar, if this was a hurdle race, Tommy's Oscar would be very, very short, but it isn't a hurdle race, and I kind of think Boot Hill was the play here for me.
Yeah, Tommy's Oscar's getting £5, but he's jumping leaves a bit to be desired at the moment, and I think we kind of know where his ceiling is. I think Boot Hill's the second best 2 mile novice chaser behind John Bond in Britain at the moment.
Yeah,
I'll prove that by taking this out. I'll be backing Boot Hill.
Yeah, I'll be backing Boot Hill as well. Epatone has been declared for the Mares Hurdle at Doncaster, 4-7. Obviously, she was meant to run last week in that race at Haydock. Kind of interesting they went here, but again, it's just the options, isn't it? There's not really another 2 mile option at the moment, is there?
No, there's definitely no 2.5 milers, and just dropping down in grade, because all the grade ones are kind of pretty much done until the festival. So yeah, it's just been seeing the backside of Constitution Hill all season. So this looks an ideal. This looks a more suitable than Haydock did in the previous entry. The ground will probably be pretty decent at Doncaster. I think it's good at the moment.
It's good at the moment, yeah.
I think that'll suit her more than a heavy Haydock. So Yeah, and I think it's also a bit slightly easier. You're not taking on any geldings here, so Martello Sky's the next in line. Trip's probably short enough for her, isn't it? So, yeah, I'd expect Epatante to kind of win this pretty decisively.
We've got the Albert Bartlett, Don Novice's hurdle as well, Grade 2. Stay Away Faye is around 11-4, 20-1 for the Bartlett. Could he stake a claim to be another one of those many, many horses that could be interesting at this price?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Nicholls usually has a decent Albert Bartlett contender. This guy could be the one. The Irish have a decent record. Like Grand Soir, I think, has been quite widely kind of tipped up by people, and you can see why. And John McConnell won it last year with Maller's Mission, of course. It seems that this fella seems kind of a similar kind of type, pretty battle hardened. The fact that it's quicker ground, it might present a small question mark for him, but yeah, you'd be hard pressed to look away from the top two in the market in that race, I think.
Yeah, I think Stay Away Faye could be the one there. Naas and Sunday, we've got a couple. The Limestone Lad Hurdle, very interesting entry of Bob Ollinger. Also, your Mares Hurdle tip, Echoes and Rain, is in there as well. Yet to be declarations out, but two very interesting entries if they both decide to take them up.
Yeah, with the reliable old yardstick of Durasso, so it's going to be a decent race. It's a good kind of bit. This is a good bit of placing, I think, with Willie Mullins, because I think Echoes and Rain ran a really good race. Last time before tumbling in that kind of pretty attritional contest at Teahupoo won when Honeysuckle was overturned. But I do think that she should probably win this. If you think the engine's gone, Bob Ollinger, this is kind of last saloon stuff, isn't it? With Bob Ollinger?
Yeah, definitely.
This has got to win. It's got to work. Particularly this kind of level. So yeah, I mean, if Bob Ollinger's back to his best, he should win. If not, then Echoes and Rain will win. So I think it's definitely between those two. And if they both somehow mishap or underperform, then Durasso's always one that's going to pick up the pieces as he usually does in these kind of smaller graded races.
Yeah, we've also an interesting kind of National Hunt Chase clue could potentially be on Sunday as well in the opener. At Naas, you've got the likes of Chemical Energy, Ramirez is in there as well. Front of Assault Won't Go. You've got Gentleman's Game, the Devil's Coachman. There's a few interesting entries, and it's going to be a busy weekend. It's kind of getting to the stage now. This is a kind of big stage, I would say. Like this and next weekend, these are two really interesting weekends in terms of the festival.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Trials Day on Saturday, and Fiestas today, the Trials, then Double Racing Festival, and you've got the Scottish Trials at Musselburgh on the same weekend. Which is always kind of fun going up to Musselburgh and watching the Irish Gold Cup at the same time. So probably aim to go along the Sunday. Just hope that the weather plays ball for it all, and it's all on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move into our anti-post selections. We'll look at our anti-post selections up on the screen just now. There are a few interesting ones. Obviously, we spoke about 3-card Bragg, Echoes and Rain could be big this week. Paisley Park as well for myself. Hi, we're getting to the stage now. We've got a lot of big entries. Where is your entry this week in the anti-post market?
It's in the County Hurdle. It's 14-1, and it's Path to Rue of Gavin Cromwell. The horse that have been one of my 5 to falls for a long, long time. He was sent off 5-1 for the Royal Bonds. Really kind of checked out. Vet didn't find any abnormalities of what he was kind of doing, but that was more of his true self today in a race that's normally pretty informative for novices going into handicaps at Cheltenham Festival. Banbridge won it last year. I was kind of mainly keeping an eye on intranet because I thought he was Willie Mullins' County Hurdle horse.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he went wrong, but he is a mark that's in the high 130s. He's probably going to get low 140s over here in Britain. But Gavin Cromwell has practically confirmed that he's going to go County Hurdle. 14's William Hill, non-runner, no bet. And I think a lot of novices are going to struggle to qualify to get these 4 runs into them for these handicap hurdles. So I think you're going to he'll be more unexposed than most in a race of this nature. The Irish have a really good record in handicap hurdles at the festival as well, particularly the lesser yards in Belfast Banter, for instance, Jeff Kidder, even Heaven Help Us, things like Mrs. Milner. I mean, you can make a similar case for HMS Seahorse in the Coral Cup, but I just think he's short enough 10s this fell at 14s for the county hurdle. I think it's fair enough. I think he's pretty highly regarded. The Royal Bond form's working out extremely well. In fact, he was regarded well enough to go for 5-1 there. His form practically ties in with Ashrow Diamond quite well as well. So I think they're better than mid 130s horses. So he's going to get a mark of low 140s. Connections have pinpointed the county hurdle at the moment. They've already suggested that they think we'll probably train him for the county hurdle. We'll probably go, and I think with a degree of certainty that far out, I think he's fair enough at 14s.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting pick. Obviously, it was impressive over the weekend. I have a dart to throw at the Mares Novice Hurdle. It's a race I haven't touched yet, which is I'm even surprised myself. I usually have about 3 or 4 by now. But I'm going to go for a Gordon Elliott horse in the Kenny Alexander colours, and it's Alka du Taber at 7-1. Will run on Saturday. It's been declared to run in the Sol Arena Mares Novice Hurdle, which is obviously a really interesting clue. It has been for a few years in terms of Cheltenham clues. Ashrow Diamond's entered in it as well. I think 7s is quite big. I think she won't be 7s if she wins that race. I think obviously as well, I think Kenny will probably want to win the race, obviously, for the De Bromhead. I think it's a guarantee. She's a guaranteed runner if she goes there. And I think I've been very encouraged with her for her first 2 runs this season. I think she's kind of sweeping under the radar as well. 7-1s, I think, is probably a decent price. So I'm going to tip up Alka du Taber and hope that she does the business on Saturday.
Yeah, it's always an informative race. That I'm in the Magical Zoe camp in that race, so and I think she's just been deliberately left for that race.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, but that is the Gordon Elliott horse that is probably the most interesting, because the likes of like Liberty Dance and Harmony Maker, they're covered collaterally by Magical Zoe. Well, she's kind of not. So yeah, they all have scope to improve at different rates anyway. So you wouldn't be cast iron ruling any of them out. But yeah, I think she's interesting, and yeah, she probably. We doubt Lucia as well. Is still ahead of the market. I don't think she's going to run again to Cheltenham. And
yeah.
A setback. It's not an ideal race for that kind of preparation, because there's normally a lot of entries and a lot of kind of horses
And I think probably Ashrow Diamond as well. She probably has the best form of the bunch so far, obviously with the gelding. She's had a lot of good kind of run against the male horses in 3 runs so far this season. She's been, to beat her would be a good yardstick.
It would be. She shapes as a 2.5 mile, though, doesn't it? Yeah. Always kind of staying on after the show, kind of thing. Whether she's just been quietly ridden or just ridden for places and to kind of peak come Cheltenham, you don't know. But I'm not sure she has the speed at this point in her career. She might be a Mares Hurdle contender next year over a more suitable trip. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting kind of race, because there's a lot of kind of untapped potential there, and yeah, that Grade 3 I suspect will probably be the kind of strongest Mares Novices form since Magical Zoe winning in Down Royal in about early November, that kind of thing. So yeah, but yeah, definitely a reasonable selection for sure.
Yeah, 2 decent picks this week as always, and we are going to wrap up the show there. Calum, it's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Yep. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Next week on the show, we'll be doing a bumper Dublin Racing Festival preview. We'll look at all the big races over next weekend, and we'll obviously recap the previous week's action. Thank you very much for tuned in. Subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels for a new show every week. And as always, if you've got a question, please leave it in the comments below or send it over social media. Thanks very much. I will see you soon. Cheers.